give us, everyone that's
Bring it.
listening now, the TLDR before we really go into the nuts and bolts.
Well, do you want the TLDR just like the whole thing? It's like the whole thing, obviously. So like the reason why today's been particularly interesting to me is that
Real quick, I feel like Mike doesn't understand TLDR.
yeah, I don't. Like if you've ever read my stuff, if you've ever read my stuff, there is no TLDR to any of that. Like it's all long form.
What is this TLDR thing you speak of?
So when you say TLDR, do you mean you want the whole thing?
You want the whole thing,
yeah.
right?
I think it might mean it means the long damn way around.
Mike has never played just the tip.
Don't let me stop.
He just ignores that shit. Go. The girl's like, just the tip, Mike.
What? Go in? Anyway, so like I think at this point everybody's aware of what's been going on with Texas and the southern border, right? Like as far as like
actually not.
Okay.
You say everybody actually not. Like
okay, fair enough.
People who don't
so
know.
Like the whole Texas has been dealing with this whole Eagle Pass thing where they decided to just throw up they basically just threw up cargo containers and put barbed wire on it to create a wall to prevent illegal immigrants from crossing over through Eagle Pass. And then the Supreme Court of the United States came through and said that now I don't understand the nuance of this necessarily, but from what I understand, or what I think I understand, the Supreme Court didn't necessarily say that they couldn't put up the barbed wire. They just said that the federal government could take it down. So now there's like this back and forth between the government can remove the barbed wire, but then Texas can put it back up. So let's just waste all the taxpayer resources and just keep doing this ridiculous back and forth.
That sounds like the most government thing of all government things.
Well, and it was actually a Fifth Circuit continuance or something like that. It wasn't okay. It was like 2 lines. It wasn't even. I think it got so blown out of proportion. And the idea that the Supreme Court is going to come down and do something like that. It's weird that the Supreme Court would do the pushback on anything like this and say, like, especially with Amy Coney Barrett over there as a, quote unquote, Republican appointee. It's kind of, it's
and
weird.
I've listened to a couple of podcast conversations where people are trying to figure out like why that happened, because to your point, Shane, is it's confusing a lot of people. It's like this doesn't like line up with your political affiliations and your beliefs. Like, is there something going on like behind the scene? Anyway, so that happened, and then Governor Abbott basically literally told the Texas National Guard, just keep putting it back up. Like, screw it, we don't care. Put up more, in fact. And then what made it really interesting today is that, because I believe that happened yesterday or the day before. It happened in the last 48 hours, that last part with Governor Abbott just telling him to put it back up. But today is very interesting because this morning, Alex Jones had Lieutenant Colonel Chambers on to talk about, he's a former Green Beret commander that's been working down on the southern border on the civilian side, like personally. And he's been talking about what he's seeing down there. That happened this morning. And then it started with, I believe, 13 Republican states committing their National Guard to supporting the Texas initiative with defending their border. And now it's up to 26 of 27. The only holdout is Vermont. On top of that, there was also a letter of former FBI executives to the president they listed out the reasons why, like, the FBI and the presidency should be concerned about what's going on with the southern border and how it is a very much a literal and technical invasion. So, like, today's been a very, very high energy day, and it's like, I think it's just fascinating. I'm hopeful because of all the states that have committed resources to help Texas in the effort. Because if Texas was left alone, that wouldn't reflect well upon the American populace, in my opinion.
Well, hey, don't forget that last part too. The Biden administration gave Texas until tomorrow to stop it all. So they put an ultimatum on it. They put an ultimatum on it. So we're about to see if Wheels down there in Texas is really going to back it all up, or if he's just going to sit there and say, "It's out of my hands."
I love that nickname, Wheels.
Wheels.
That's a callback to any of you dorks that love the X-Men. That was what Wolverine came in and said. Oh, what do they call you? Wheels? Professor X. Fucking great line.
I figured it was a toss back to when Biden fell off his bicycle.
No, it's Governor Abbott who's in a wheelchair.
Right. So some people are saying, like Obi is saying, no, government doesn't do anything logical. Like the whole thing that's going on down there doesn't make any sense. But
yeah,
if they're putting it up and Border Patrol is taking it down, that's not a great look for Border Patrol.
No.
Right?
Well, the Texas when Governor Abbott first did this, when he used the National Guard to seize authority over the border, the Texas Border Patrol was excited about it. Like they wrote a letter like supporting it.
Yeah,
like that's
Mayorkas who's it's Mayorkas who's kind of orchestrating this from DC. Like he's that guy that's like, I don't have any recollection. You know how they when they test.
Right, I don't remember.
I don't remember shit about it.
Caught me red-handed doing all this shit, but I don't remember.
Exactly. And so these guys that are not responsible, or this is what I find is very interesting. And you said we have 26 states now that have signed on with Texas to say you got our
Vermont is the only Republican state that has not committed resources.
Dude, if I was a soy boy from fucking the Northeast or the West Coast or some shit like that, and I started to see all this stuff lining up, and I mean this, for all the politicians, all these people that have been plotting and hoping, that we get this, fascist republic here in North America. Like they've got to be shitting their pants right now, because it's not just the states that are coming. It's like you've got all these guys that are just, have been sitting back for the last 4 fucking years going, man, in case of emergency, break glass, right? Like we don't want to do this. We have been extremely patient, and to now have that energy just punch them right in the face all over the, mostly Twitter, because you'll get banned everywhere else. But to have that energy punch them right in the face, like there's got to be some reconsideration. Like, man, are you guys sure? Are you sure about this?
Yeah. Are you really sure? So 2 things. First of all, hey, Randy. Shout outs to Randy Kelly. Lizard's gonna lizard, damn right. And the second thing is that this is very high on the fuck around find out scale. Right?
Yeah.
This is very high. Like I'm not saying it's gonna kick something off, and I hope it doesn't. But it's like I was talking to somebody earlier about this today. This is like the National Guards are made up of individuals from the states that they come from. Right. So the Texas National Guard is going to be made up of a bunch of dudes from Texas. The composition culturally of the Texas National Guard is going to be a little bit different than the composition of the California National Guard, for example.
I get what you're saying.
You tracking?
Yeah.
So, look, I hope nothing weird goes down from all of this, and I hope it's not some kind of weird flashpoint. But it's like these people are messing with the wrong guard unit.
Well, and 2 things. All the, like, if you look at the map, you should also notice that all of these states are where all the food comes from, except for California. California is a major food producer, but everything else, like you got all the corn, the wheat, the soy, like all of that is within the central of the United States, right? And they're also, a lot of them are major oil producers, obviously Texas and Oklahoma. And then it goes all the way from, because I was in a group chat that I'm in on Twitter, we were talking about how it goes from the Gulf of Mexico to the Canadian border, right? Like that's really important too. And then on top of that, another thing that I just realized while we've been talking is that if you look at the map of all these states that committed resources, they're not the states that had exoduses of people. They're the states that received a shitload of people in the last 3 years, which means they also have a boatload of tax revenue going into the future.
Mike, you bring up something really awesome there, like that side of it plus the infrastructure side that's built into that area. Because if you look at a lot of the pipelines, and I'm sure Mike has, a lot of the pipelines funnel to Texas because there's a refinery,
specifically Houston.
Yeah, not to mention you also have gigantic waterways in the Mississippi, the Ohio, the Snake. If you can float cargo up and down these waterways, this is one of those very strategic points that I think gets overlooked in America, but it's the great rivers in America are something that a lot of the world doesn't enjoy. And, the fact that they're navigable, on top of that, Texas has got its own grid, for that matter. And then you've obviously got the East and the West Coast grids. But yeah, this is shaping up. I think probably like a lot of us thought it was, right? Is you've got a lot of the people who work for a living, who got skin in the game, who are fairly self-sufficient, play by most of the rules. And you just get to a point where you're like, guys, like you've left us like no other damn choice. Like you brought us to this.
Yeah. Well, and
I just realized in this conversation that how much we've talked several times since we started this show of kind of the deterioration of the United States military, like at the federal level. But I think because of that, there's been an exodus of guys that still want to kind of do that. And then they go back and they join a state guard, or they may even move to a state where they kind of support those politics more. A perfect example is one of our previous guests, Joel Lambert, got out of federal service and is now in the National Guard in Tennessee. And so we're getting to a point to where, like, yeah, maybe they don't have as good of equipment and stuff, but where it really counts, like the actual warriors that are going to be doing something, if it ever came to that, or just standing there looking tough, it's kind of starting to lean more towards the states, it seems like.
Well, that's how it should be, in my opinion. Like the federal government isn't supposed.
The guard could be the badasses now.
Well, I don't know about that. I was in the guard, and I don't know about that.
Welcome, Kyle Schneps. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. How's it going, Alex, gentlemen?
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
What's up, man?
Doing good. We're going to need you to get real loud on that mic.
Yeah, is it kind of low right now?
You're good there.
That's better.
All right, I'll stay here so you guys can get a good view of this.
Awesome.
Face.
All right, we got about 5 minutes to the official go live time, even though we're already live, but
Kyle, are you in Texas?
Pennsylvania.
Close enough.
Pretty much the same thing.
You just take the Ohio River, you can get there.
Yeah, I need to be someplace where my vote counts.
That was a good thing.
I saw this really funny meme the other day, and it was basically like, man, if they keep violating our freedoms over and over again, if they do it for another 4 or 5 times, I am going to vote so hard.
Well, the interesting thing, like with this specific development is, like, for this to be happening now ahead of the election, it's like what is the Democratic Party gonna think they're gonna do? You think you're gonna try and swat this physically? Like, that's not gonna look good for you.
Well, it's possible that, I mean, when you look at what they expect to happen tomorrow, they expect Biden to nationalize, right? Federalize the National Guard, right? And the comparison is always 1957 and integration in schools, right? And how Eisenhower used a nationalized National Guard, a federalized National Guard to integrate the schools, right? I think in Arkansas. So is the Democratic Party so far up its own ass that they think that this is the same thing, that they're standing on the right side of history, that this is all about racism and this is their moment to do the same thing? Because what is it, 60-70% of the country is over this shit with the border, right? So if they do this, right, this is political suicide. I don't see another way around it. The only question is, what does the Texas National Guard do tomorrow? Do they say it's not a lawful order, we're not going along with it, we're not going to be part of the feds? Well, because the ball's back in their court at this point. Because he said what he said.
Yeah.
So what
and the
happens
beautiful
tomorrow?
thing is he's got the Constitution on his side. Article 4 was written for this specific. I mean, it says literal invasion, right? And if those guys are sitting on the ground saying this is an invasion, that's Article 4 of the Constitution. And what he's done in that letter is he's invoked Article 1, Section 10 is, states' rights. Obviously, that any power that's not specifically reserved to the federal government is reserved to the states and its people. This is that piece that, as a guy that memorized the Constitution, this is it. Like, finally, and I know it's convenient at a lot of times, but this at this time, like, you know what? Good. Let's use it. Let's use the shit out of this thing in full force until this problem is resolved. And you know, I don't know what it looks like afterwards, but for the people with skin in the game, this has got to be your play.
We should post the letter from the Attorney General of Texas in the show notes so people can check it out.
Got it.
We should also post the link for what we're going to be talking about with Kyle in the show notes here as well.
The other interesting thing to add on to what like Tim and Shane were just talking about too, in my opinion, is that like it further weakens the Democrats' position, considering they have I think it was 5 former FBI executives that wrote that letter stating that it is a legitimate problem and they need to be concerned with it. It's like even your own co-opted organization is showing that former leadership is now on the Republican, not even the Republican side, but like the actual American side.
Former
like
director of Homeland Security.
All right,
the
Alex.
same group whose Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation now says that there actually is an invasion. What the fuck? Now I don't. Now I'm against Texas.
Exactly.
Alex, what were you saying there? Because it was kind of getting muddled up a little bit.
Oh yeah, there was also a former director of Homeland, like that guy. He also signed that same letter.
Okay, I didn't catch that one. Yeah, that's big.
Yeah, but to Tim's point, man, you know, you look at this, and the thing is you know, the point was, are the Dems heads so far up their own ass? And the answer is, I don't think they have a choice. When you look at the past 4 years and then some, if they back off of any of this and they lose, somehow they lose power, which, you know, they're counting on everything. I think this is go for broke. I think if they lose
this is go for broke. This is, if we have to cancel the election this year, we're going to do it.
This is
that's
dangerous.
where we are right now.
So that's the point. Is I think their head is so far up their own ass. They are so committed at this point. They know they've committed treason. They have defended the borders of Ukraine. They have defended the borders of Israel. They have defended the borders of all these other nations all around the planet, and done all of these things with COVID. You know, with you look at what happened with Fauci, and everybody knows.
ESG.
Like it is straight up treason, and what's going to come out and continue to come out as time goes on with the Epstein list and everything else. Yeah, I think their head is that far up their own ass. They've miscalculated. They are woefully in a corner, and this is where things get really dangerous.
Yeah. So Kyle Schneps, aren't you glad that you've come on this show today? Because you guys are addressing some of these folks directly. It's very out in the open, man. Everybody's names are on these things. I've signed it. I know a lot of people have signed it. We're going to talk about it here in a minute, but we should probably officially get this thing rolling.
Rock and roll. Woo! Would you look at those numbers, boys? I mean, we got, I think, 38, 36 in there now. Welcome to Bitcoin veterans, everybody.
1,000.
I know we are
1,000.
Hey, the number is going up on a weekly basis. It's trending in the right direction, and I love that. I am joined by Jordan and Gabe and Mike and Alex. We've got 2 guests tonight. We've got Tim Johlman and we got Kyle Schneps. We're going to hear from Kyle first, but this is Bitcoin Veterans. If you love this show, throw it up, go out there, smash the like button. If you're new, go out there and tell somebody else, you know, and say, hey, bring your buddies over. We're doing this show to light a fire and a passion in the veterans that stood up for this nation. They swore an oath to the Constitution to defend the nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I think we're going to be talking a lot about the domestic ones tonight, but Bitcoin is that is what we wanted in terms of a peaceful revolution. We're trying, but at the same time, it's one of those things where we do have an idea in terms of what freedom is, what sovereignty is, and you get pushed to a point so far. We got to take action, and there's no better group on earth than veterans, especially here in America. There's 16 million of you guys out there. We've got a built-in network, so grab your battle buddies, bring them in here every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. And start doing the connections. We have multiple groups set up for everything, whether it's citadels, whether it's comms, it's getting job skill with Gabe on Operation Bitcoin, PTSD with the Brave mission. We are doing firearms training and everything else that obviously we all need to know everything that we need to be proficient at in the society that we're moving towards. So this is a very action-oriented group. If you want to get connected in the chat, you can get a hold of us at Bitcoin Veterans on all of the social media. But for the show, Kyle Schneps, welcome to the show first. You're our first guest. You've written a letter to Congress from U.S. military and national security professionals. And this is, I'll tell you what, this is a really nice, succinct, short, to the point piece of writing that I think most people can get behind. We're going to share the link in the show notes for everybody. But welcome to the show, Kyle.
Thanks, Shane. Thanks, everybody, for having me. I have to say that opening video segment, I've never seen a better video segment. It encapsulates everything the show stands for in about 25 seconds. It's perfect.
Thanks, Kyle.
Shane did that.
Yeah, that was all Shane.
I mean, crayons and all. Like,
yeah, I gotta give it to Gabe.
Made that shit happen.
Gabe gave me the magic brownie, mix in there. So I was like, let's give it.
That's probably my favorite part every single time is getting a spoonful of chocolate.
So Kyle, I wanna just thank you for what you guys have done. Like Kyle, and others with the Blockchain Association sent a letter back in November to Congress, and it generated a lot of feedback. Senator Warren was actually tweeting about it. And like, bring us up to speed, Kyle. Where are we today? Like, tell us a little bit about, number one, Blockchain Association. What is this all about? Like, and what are we trying to achieve here?
Yeah, absolutely. So just quickly about me, my day job, I'm Vice President of Public Policy for Foundry. Foundry has largest Bitcoin mining pool in the world. It's a miner, and we have like devoted any aspect of Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. We have an entire team of engineers and folks working on that specific thing. We are a member of the Blockchain Association, which is a DC oriented trade organization that deals with just crypto policy in general. And even though we do focus on Bitcoin, it is a great organization that does have a lot of outreach in DC. And so we try to participate. A little bit of backstory on this particular bill that we are fighting. It started probably about last summer. It's called the Digital Assets Anti-Money Laundering Act. And it is Elizabeth Warren's, the sort of crown jewel in her anti-crypto army that she has been building. And so we decided, anybody who's a member of the Blockchain Association, we were going to get together, any sort of veterans or former Intel professionals or former, folks who worked in the US government, get together, write a letter saying, you know what, Senator Warren's claims about Bitcoin being all wrapped up in the Middle East, terrorism in the Middle East is something that we need to push back against, because a lot of us have, fought those wars in a sense, or a lot of those have done operations, either if it's counting Iran, Hezbollah, whatever you want to pick. And we just don't see any connection there. And what Elizabeth Warren has done over the past couple of years in building her anti-crypto army is opportunistically seize on anything in the media and then blame that on Bitcoin. And so we wanted to write a letter, say, hey, we are a group of professionals who have experience, in national security. have been trusted in a wide variety of issues in the past while working in government, we are telling you that there is no nexus between Bitcoin and terrorism. This is completely blown out of proportion without any context. And so we wrote this letter, and then we did a fly-in day where everybody who signed it came in. We did, like 100 meetings on the Hill, where we articulated our points. And that resulted, as Alex said, in a lot of problems for her bill. People were pushing back. And so she tweeted about our letter, our visit. She then wrote a letter to Coinbase, Coin Center, and the Blockchain Association, a sort of Soviet style or almost McCarthy-esque, McCarthy era style, where she demanded that she claimed there was some sort of revolving door between the national security government and crypto, right? Like there are
this
recruiting
this part is hilarious, but please continue.
And then demanded that these organizations she was writing to, kind of name names in a sort of, like I said, Soviet style, like tell us who these people are. She demanded to know anybody who went from government into the Bitcoin or crypto industry. She wanted to know their names. She wanted to know their salaries. She wanted to know all this information reported to her. And so now we, all of these other organizations, Blockchain Association, Coinbase, et cetera, have written back letters. But we were like, well, we need to get the original signatories, write a letter back. And we also would like to open this up to anybody who cares about Bitcoin and defeating this bill, because this bill does have major implications for self-custody, major implications for mining, major implications for how you can transfer your Bitcoin, major implications for the government knowing pretty much anything you do with your Bitcoin. So we wanted to write back, and now we're opening it up, and we kind of just want to show people like, hey, if you take a swipe at this national security vets intel community, we will come back in numbers, right? We will sort of like Fantasia style double up the broomsticks. And so
100x the broomsticks. Yeah. Let's go.
So that's what we're doing, try to double or triple our numbers here, and appreciate the opportunity to give that backstory and tell your audience. So for anybody who cares about this issue and does have any sort of national security background, we would welcome you signing the letter, take a read. It's, I think, really important because, again, Senator Warren has, I do public policy for a living, right? And she has come out and said, if your livelihood, if your occupation, if your personal beliefs, or if your investment portfolio is tied up in Bitcoin, I want to eliminate that. I mean, she has not minced words, and she has said in interviews that she wants to do that to make way for a central bank digital currency. And so these are things that, are very alarming to me. I think a central bank digital currency is one of the worst things that could happen in the United States. And so we are trying to push back, and we are trying to reach out, not necessarily to her, because she has dug her heels in politically speaking. She is politically pot committed. But what we're trying to do is reach out to all the other members of Congress and the Senate and say, look, she may be questioning our motivations in that letter she wrote back, because we're part of this revolving door, right? But actually, we're writing this of our own volition. And we think it's really important that you listen to our unique experience at the nexus of, digital assets. We have to speak the DC language in that sense, but digital assets and national security. And so that's the main push here that we're trying to do.
Okay, so a couple of things. Can we drop the link in the chat? Let's also try to drop the link in social media. This is a chance for those of you who are active, maybe if you're veterans, military adjacent, law enforcement, worked in intelligence, any of those things, check it out. If you agree, if you're a Bitcoiner, if you think that this is massive overreach, which it is, consider maybe signing your name on that thing. and adding some strength to it from your perspective.
It's also, I think, pretty prescient, and as far as the timing, to have Kyle have you come on here and talk about this, because there was a video from a guy, Ray something or other. I can't remember his YouTube channel, but I posted on Twitter a couple days ago where he found a docket from the Federal Reserve governors where they were talking about adding a fourth additional definition to what defines a currency. And that fourth point was social control, so that they could use it through a CBDC. I was just like, dude, you have got to be flipping kidding me. Like, the fact that they're trying to push all of this, like, they're using like the sleight of hand, like Elizabeth Warren is attracting all the attention, and they're just slipping this under, like, up on top of the table for other people to sign while the public is in outrage about CBD. Like, this, they're curtailing all of, or not curtailing, they're like fomenting all of this outrage about CBDCs, but then they're building the infrastructure out at the same time. So they can just be like, boop, oh, look at that. No, honey, I didn't make this decision. I slipped and fell into her. Like, I didn't like actually intend for this to happen.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth there. That can happen a lot. You have this lightning rod for the media and for attention, and then you make these small bureaucratic changes under cover of darkness, and you basically can affect some of the change that you wanted, that, and get around the sort of the any sort of public comments or any legislative cohesion. To pass something. And, to your point about surveillance, I mean, this is something that we face. So me and my company, the Foundry, we were like front and center for a year and a half fighting the New York State moratorium on Bitcoin mining that they implemented. And the governor signed a year ago. I spent a lot of hours. In fact, I think I had come on your show, Alex, at one point with Alex Brammer and Jason Browder one time talking about this. But one of the things we had to face there is that they tried to use every vector of FUD you could possibly imagine during that battle. And one of them was the main proponent and drafter of that bill. She stood on the floor of the New York State Assembly and was talking about how China banned Bitcoin for environmental reasons. Even China did it. And we had to push back. And we wrote as a bunch of as veterans and Intel pros and people who've worked counter China operations, like, no, China banned Bitcoin simply to promote a CBDC, the digital yuan, in order to promote its surveillance state in coming up with that sort of like cornerstone of its surveillance state, right? The finishing touch that can be exported overseas. And this is something we had to explain to so many members that no, it was not banned for environmental reasons in China. That this is really a surveillance play. And that's what I think is most alarming about any sort of, and I think everybody here will be on the same page about a CBDC in America, is that it takes that authoritarian or communist surveillance state and brings it here. And it's not something we want.
You guys got really vindicated pretty quickly when the word got out that China was adding more coal power than has ever existed across the entire planet.
Yeah. All right. Listen, I just want to say, Kyle, thank you so much for what you guys are doing. We have a link in the chat here that you guys can go. If you are a veteran, if you're former law enforcement, if you are former intelligence, you can check this out. If you agree with it, sign on to it. If you're so disposed, you can also do so. We're going to tweet it out from our handle. Jordan's got that handled. And Kyle, just really appreciate what you guys are doing, man. It's inspiring to see guys standing up for what is right in the current environment. It's a hard thing to do, and it's just a theme that I believe that we need to do more and more often. Like dudes who are we've been told for decades now that strong men need to sit down and shut up and be politically correct. And the simple facts are, man, it is time to stop doing that. It is time to stand up for what's right. and you guys are doing it, and I'm proud of what you guys are doing. Looking forward to working with you in the future on whatever it is you guys are working on. Hopefully we can add to that as Bitcoin veterans, and just looking forward to more collaboration as we go forward here.
Thanks so much, guys, for having me on. And to that point, I mean, I really appreciate anybody who stands up and does sign this. I mean, it's a lot of the information. Please pay attention. You can, just sign your name. Most of the stuff is optional. Put what you want. But, I never thought I would be in a situation where signing a petition or reaching out to my own government, I would even have to have in the back of my mind, oh, there could be some retribution. So, considering that the target of this letter is in charge of financial services in the United States. I mean, we should not be in that situation to even think that in the United States. And so I do appreciate anybody standing up and putting their name to this, because it's not just, signing something on the street for Greenpeace, right? This is like something that people are looking at very closely.
For sure.
Yeah.
Bitcoin Viction makes this real easy. You just say, fuck you, financial services. I am a financial service. So, Kyle, thank you so much, my man. We really appreciate that. And it's gotta be the way it is. These guys aren't going to hold us hostage like they did in Canada. Bitcoin is the way forward. So, Kyle, thanks again for stopping by, my man. And we will be talking to you soon, I'm sure.
And
Awesome.
in typical Bitcoin veterans tradition, Shane is testing whether we were going to get kicked off of YouTube or not.
I just said financial services. I mean, that's free, right? Like that's a good one.
Yeah, let's go. Whatever. It's all good. We'll tell the truth as long as they allow us to.
Yep.
Cheers.
Our other guest, I should say, tonight, Tim Johlman. We go way back. Tim joined the Navy at 18 years old. He was part of CTT, which focused on anti-ship and anti-missile defense, electronic warfare. He eventually moved over to the TIO, Tactical Information Operations position for NSW, Naval Special Warfare. He's been on multiple deployments out there, and we have talked in the past, Tim. And I got to tell you, what we've talked about in terms of shop backstage. You are a man of means and action, and we are just absolutely tickled to death to have you here tonight, man.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Really excited to be here. Everything Bitcoin Veterans is doing is so exciting and so important. I got out in early 2018 and really struggled, I think, to kind of find some purpose and some meaning in this increasingly black-pilled world. And getting veterans on the mission, getting veterans working on Bitcoin, really that foundation of real freedom and real liberty is so incredibly important. So excited to be here. Love everything you guys are doing.
Hell yeah.
Who's your
Appreciate
favorite host? No, I'm
Well, obviously it's me. Obviously.
obviously.
I was going to say it's obviously Gabe.
Everybody can't be Tim's
Wizard.
favorite too.
I just want to thank Tim for reading that script that we sent over.
Ooh, you're making it easy.
Easy.
Well, getting real for 1 second. Like, there's a lot of guys that, joined because they're mission-oriented dudes. They're what I call sheepdogs. They're like, I want to do something for my people, my family, my country, and this is the way I know how to do it. And they found out that maybe it wasn't what they thought it was. And so now it's like, A, how do you make up for that? Or B, like, how do you move forward in the future serving your fellow human, serving your family, serving your people, serving your community, and doing it in a way that actually matters? There's so much that's going on in today's world in the West where it feels like the deck is a little stacked against the average person, right? So, like, what do you do? Tim, why are you doing this, man? Why are you involved in Bitcoin? Why are you involved in the libertarian movement? Why are you involved in any of this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back, obviously. I had a had a really kind of conservative, traditional Midwestern upbringing. I was 13 when 9/11 happened. That was big, right? So those are kind of some formative years to see that go down. And people today kind of forget the like single-minded fervor that overtook the country back then. So 2002, 3, 4, leading up to that 2004 election, it was, united we stand. Everybody was on the same page. The war in Iraq is where that started to slip and get very divisive and polarizing. But going to high school in Wyoming, still pretty just heavy conservative. So I wanted to be a part of something bigger. I wanted a mission. I wanted purpose. And I knew that if I went to college, I'd have dropped out the first semester. I mean, absolutely. There was just no place for me going to college at that point. So joined the military. Originally anti-ship missile defense, fell pretty quickly into tactical SIGINT. And my first deployment was 2009 to Afghanistan. And I was on a weird deployment rotation. It was 2 months in, 2 months out initially for me. So I was in a unique position to really kind of see what a shit show Afghanistan was firsthand, because so many guys will deploy like in traditional units. You go for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, right? And you go there and your commander says, this is our mission. And then at the end of the time there, he'll say, wow, guys, we did a great job. You accomplished all of this. Now let's all go home to your families, back to your guard unit, whatever it is. And you've done your part to serve your country. Now there's enough guys that would go back again, 12 months later, 2 years later, whatever it was. But when you go there for those 2 or 3 months at a time, just back and forth, you start to see that it's all bullshit, right? Like when you go after the same objective fuckface over and over and over again, the same shadow governor of the same village or district that was supposedly killed 2 months ago because they just replaced him, right? And then you still see these sit reps like, yeah, we're accomplishing so much, like this is going so well, right? And it's not. And you just start to see that it's not. And so there's plenty of guys, like you could bury the head in the sand and just be like, you know what? Like I'm doing my part and it's hard and everybody's doing their thing. Or you could be like, you know what? Ron Paul makes a lot of sense, right? Like Ron Paul nailed this shit. And for me, starting in 2009 and then just going back and forth like that, leading up to that 2012 election and Ron Paul's push there in Iowa in early 2012, that was really the moment for me where it's like, it is bullshit. I can't trust this government. I know it's garbage. And I stayed in for another 5 years after that. But it was a turning point for me. And once you see that matrix, once you understand that they're lying over and over and over again to the people back home who will shake your hand and be like, thank you for your service. I appreciate everything that you've done. It's so important. And you're like, man, if only you knew, right? Like if you understood, and what I understand, 20 years of Afghanistan to be now, which was basically 20 years of a giant money laundering operation, then people would be absolutely appalled. The great thing now is that people can see in real time that that's basically what Ukraine was, right? Has become, always was, really. And so I think that more and more people have woken up to this. They're a lot more open to the idea that you can be skeptical and not be anti-patriotic or some kind of nut job. And you say, we need to question authority. We need to question the wars, the killing, the just absolute nonsense. So that is what brought me into the military, eventually out of the military, and then ultimately to Bitcoin, because I have this idea at this point that there's no place for government in a polite society, and Bitcoin is the solution to that.
Hey, so I got a question, Tim, for you first, but then I'm sure that the rest of you guys will probably have some input. And it's something I've been trying to bring up in conversation more and more lately, and for whatever reason, it has just slipped my mind every time we get together every week. But one issue that Tim, you primarily jog my memory of as far as this topic is the public's interface with what's going on with the information that's given to them, right? Because by the time that the public sees information, by the time it gets to Bloomberg, it is so watered down and like misdirected from the reality that it was, that people don't understand even just how like military reporting language is constructed, right? So like even like it's constructed in a way to where if there is a kinetic conflict or if there is stuff that happens, somebody who's reading it can have a hard time of discerning just how impactful or violent that interaction was, right? So by the time that these journalists or these agencies get it and they push it out to the public, it's probably representative of maybe 1% of what actually happened over there. Is there anything that you guys can like speak to that? Like, cause like as a not combat operator or signals intelligence, I don't like have a whole lot of weight behind what I have to say on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen so like when I was in Syria, you know, we had, or before I was in Syria, I was in southern Turkey, like right on the border. And basically like me and 4 guys replaced like a whole company of Green Berets because they were starting to push into Syria. And so we did like a real quick like handover. Those guys wanted to like meet up with their team and get into Syria. And the whole like angle at the time was like we had this little like wedge of our guys in northwestern Syria where it was like, here's our back guys, and basically our whole job is to keep the Kurds away from Turkey because they just like hate each other. Whole like backstory there, right? So we're just basically trying to use our guys to like put a wedge between these. And there's this one guy he's not a Kurd, he's an Arab, and he's trying to make peace somewhat. I mean, he might have had a fucking angle. They always do, but he actually presented like a reasonable like peace solution. And it was to like, hey, we want to let these people come back into their homes. Like, we don't want to be ruling over them. Basically, they wanted to get paid to go like kick ISIS's ass somewhere else or do whatever. But it was like, all right, this is a exit strategy or a potential one that at least somebody on the ground's like thinking about this. And so in trying to send that up to higher, I guess I made the mistake of I announced it in a commander's update brief that had some Turkish military in it. And once they heard the idea of like a peace treaty going on in this, they were like, whoa, no, that's bullshit. No, we can't do that. Like, we have got to have a buffer zone to keep the Kurds away. Like, we cannot allow the Kurds to go back. And so it just kind of blew up into this thing where like the group S3 is calling me and he's like, why the fuck would you say that? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, if I thought that was something I shouldn't have said, then I wouldn't have said it clearly. But it's just like things like that. You're getting pushback, and it's like, why? Because the Turks don't like it? Like, shouldn't we be thinking of our own objective? Now, that said, there are ways to let your commander know that without saying it. But just little things like that, like these are third rails to discuss in certain circumstances. So what, we're just saying like we're not going to move towards peace ever at all? So like just one of many examples I could probably give from that deployment on how like what's going on at the ground, whether that was really what was going to work out or not, how it gets filtered through. No, there's a higher level like objective here, and this war ain't ending anytime soon.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into a little bit. I'd like to learn a bit about Tim's background. So, Tim, tell us a little bit about your background in service. Tell us what brought you to Bitcoin, and maybe after that, if we have time, we'll do a little bit of story time.
Yeah, background in service, like I said, CTT, in for about 12 years. I made chief at the end of my career. Spent the bulk of it then in tactical SIGINT, special operations. Never actually was on a ship. Thought I would be on a ship. You know, when you're 18 years old, you have a lot of ideas about what you might be doing in the military. I don't think most people end up doing whatever those things are. I specifically remember, I mean, and no offense to you Army guys, but in 2005, when I was looking at signing all the paperwork, I didn't even talk to the Air Force. Anybody that lives in dorms, like, I'm not trying to go to college, right? Like, so I don't know what the deal with dorms are. But I talked to the Army, the Navy, and the Marine Corps. And the Army guys at that time, that was 2005. Everybody's getting blown up in Iraq. And I was raised to respect my elders, but I knew objectively at 17 years old that these recruiters were the dumbest people I'd ever talked to in my entire life. Like, there was no way around it. But the Navy guys were so chill. Like, they were so cool. They didn't lie to me once. Like, I can say, going back through my career, they told me the truth about everything. So that was great. So joined the Navy, had great recruiters there, Cheyenne, Wyoming. And so boot camp, Great Lakes, A school, Pensacola, Florida. I was in Denver in a watch floor kind of NSA billet for a couple of years. And then, ended up getting into special operations after that. And I just wanted to be part of something, right? Like, I could have gone to a ship at that point, but so much was happening in Iraq and Afghanistan. So that's where the action was at. I wanted to deploy. I didn't want to sit on a ship. I still believed, again, in the idea of the mission and what we were told at that point. But like I said, 2009, you start deploying. So you go through all of that overseas, and you start to question things. And that's, Alex, what brought me to Bitcoin. I first heard about Bitcoin in 2013 from some NSA contractors, actually. I was going through a technical course, 802.11 related course. And so we were on a break, and these guys were just talking about Bitcoin. And I had never heard of Bitcoin, right? Like, I did not know what this thing was, this magical internet money. And so I was asking them some questions. And these guys were very technically minded. So they were very, very interested in Bitcoin. They thought it seemed really cool. They liked it. But at the end of that conversation, I specifically remember them saying, but it's going to be banned. And I was like, oh, well, at that point I was getting kind of blackpilled. I was like, if the government's going to fuck anything up, it's this. So they'll probably ban it. And so 2013 cycle goes by. I don't touch Bitcoin, right? 2017 rolls around. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, this thing looks like it has some staying power, but it is a bubble, right? Like, there's no way. Like, this can't, you know what I mean? Like, there's no way.
Yeah. You and me were exactly the same in 2017. Same. Yeah.
So, I mean, at least I didn't buy, we won't even mention it, but some shit coins that year, but at least I didn't do that. But look, 2020 rolls around, 2020 hits. And at this point, I had started college in 2019. I left, like I said, early 2018, left the service. So start college. And so we're suddenly locked down, right? I have nothing but time on my hands. It's this like hybrid shit version of college where it's all these things that were supposed to be in person that now they're trying to figure out how to do it online. So my homework took 5 minutes a day. I had nothing to do. So I was literally just reading about, crypto and Bitcoin and trying to figure it all out.
Crypto.
And so I will admit to being into broader crypto for a short period, but it's like Ian over at Swan told me in a conversation I had recently. He's like, you get wrecked enough and you just kind of see the light. And so ultimately, that's what brought me to Bitcoin. And it wasn't, for me, you had Gary Krause on a few months ago, maybe, and he really was drawn to the technical side. For me, it was the liberty side, like the freedom side. And ultimately, it's like I said earlier, I don't think there's a place for these governments in polite society. And so the question is, how does this work then, right? And the answer is Bitcoin, right? Because what is all of government based on, right? Like, it is based on trust, right? Can you trust these people, right? What have we learned over the last 4 years? Like, you cannot trust. Yeah.
Let me interject one thing. It's based on trust, but also coercion. Right?
Absolutely.
Lots of
that. Because taxes are collected by the threat of violence. You don't pay your taxes, you go to jail. The guys show up with the guns. So please continue.
Yeah. Well, no, look, it's a difficult thing. When you come from a background where you care about your country, you're a patriotic kid, you grew up in believing more. I'm not saying that we all believe that George Washington never lied and cherry tree stories and all of the myths of the Republic.
What?
But you believe in something more, right? You want to believe in something more. And it's difficult when you go through these last 4 years and you watch what has happened in this country. You thought that you were signing up to defend freedom, right? And to defend liberty. And what you find out is that you weren't, right? It was all bullshit. The wars were bullshit for the most part. What really happened, right? And I think what happened is that the Constitution failed. And I know that that is triggering for definitely the boomers and probably a lot of veterans too. But the good news is that I believe, and you guys stop me if you think I'm getting too far off the rails, but I think that Bitcoin can literally replace the Constitution, right? Because
whoa, that's quite a statement.
It's quite a statement, but I genuinely believe this. And
I'm here for you.
Hey, thank you. But we know we can't trust government, right? Operation Northwoods, Operation Mockingbird, Operation Midnight Climax, like the list goes on and on. We don't need more examples, right? We don't need more examples.
Northwoods, you name it.
So if the trust is gone, where does that leave us, right? It leaves us with Bitcoin, because what is Bitcoin, right? It is literally trust, right? We know that Bitcoin secures property with trust more than any other government or constitution ever could, period, right? And when you look back through history, like John Locke and Adam Smith, if you had to boil it down to one thing, like what was it? It was property rights, right? So what did Jefferson and the founders try to do, right? The best way possible with the limited technology at the time, they tried to secure property rights, right? They just didn't have the tech to do it. And so the Constitution is this beautifully flawed document, and it's completely failed because it can't secure property rights. The other morning on, I think it was Cafe Bitcoin, is it Mickey Koss? Is that his name? You guys familiar with him? Seems like a really awesome, really awesome dude. Really like listening to him, but he made a comment. He's like, under what authority does Elizabeth Warren do this stuff? And the answer is under her authority. Right? Because you could argue all day about what is the Constitution, what should it be, and what should it not be. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. People are going to interpret it however they want to achieve whatever they want. Right? So like objective law is this false premise. It's a myth. Like John Hasnas is a professor of law at Georgetown, right? Not just some hack on the internet like me. And he wrote this paper, The Myth of the Rule of Law. And you can Google it. Like it's a brilliant paper. And in it, basically, he breaks down that law is anything but objective. And when you look at what the Biden administration is doing with the southern border, right, they're violating laws on the books because they want to, right? And who is stopping them? Is the Justice Department stopping them? The states are trying, in theory, and we'll see how that turns out.
Well, if nobody's enforcing the law, it doesn't matter.
Right, absolutely. And look, and both sides will look you dead in the face and tell you that exactly what they're doing is constitutional. Right.
Yeah. Look, but to your point, it's like at the end of the day, and many of the founders even said this too. It's like it's up to every generation. It's up to us, because any generation could basically take what was written before and turn it into whatever the fuck they want. Right. Oh, yeah. We need to stand on principle. What does it mean?
Well, that's a beautiful thing, right? And I think Tim's point is, a lot of what hurts, the boomer and the people who are so dug into the American, mythology of the Constitution, this document that, came 10 years after the revolution, it was a centralization by some very, what they called the aristocratic combination. And the guys on this panel all have heard me say it before, but the real heroes of that day were the guys that were anonymous, the guys that were the anti-federalists that were standing against centralization. And that's what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is decentralization, and it forces localism, which is pure, which is more, correct in terms of how you should be governed if you are going to have people who are making decisions off of your behalf, right? And that's one of the best things about this is the decentralization factor was always baked into America. It was actually the first thing that was baked into America. And then they started layering up, and that Constitution was that first layer that sounded good to some people who were aristocratically connected to banks and as tycoons in business and elite politicians, so that they could have more power, so that they could begin this, this movement towards listening. They weren't all bad people. I mean, a lot of them did some great things, but like this idea that we need to be a centralized organization when, some of the best history is the unwritten history of peace of places like Switzerland and the Cantons. And that's one of the biggest pieces I think people miss in history is, we here in at least the American society that we were told, is, oh, look at this great general and look at this great war hero and look at these guys. The greatest part of history is when it's at peace, when humans have figured out how to coexist and how to trade. And that's exactly what Bitcoin is. It's decentralization and it's localism.
That's precisely what the Renaissance was, right? Explosion of cultural thought and like new thought and science and everything. And everybody was just busy doing all this new thought and shit. And then all of a sudden, because that came out of the Dark Ages, right? Dark Ages, Renaissance for a while, and then things got a little crazy again afterwards. So I'm hoping, like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm personally hoping that not hoping that this is the Dark Ages, but it kind of feels like we're getting into it. But the Renaissance comes afterwards, right? After the reshuffling and everything is done.
Well,
it's going to have to happen.
Right? This is that next Renaissance, right? That separation of money and state. We had separation of church and state. That was huge. Right. And we had some form of the separation of powers. Right. And again, talk about the way that the Constitution has failed there. Lysander Spooner, I'm sure you guys all know the quote. But this separation of money and state, that is the ultimate nail in the coffin of central authority. Right. And that is something that I'm incredibly like you guys. And my girlfriend she'll tell me that I get too dark and I'm too pessimistic about these things. You guys have had some dark conversations on here the last few weeks. But look, like, there is something that's so exciting and something to be so optimistic about with Bitcoin and this trustless future with this immutable ledger that defunds the state. It is amazing, right? So like we could talk about all the dark stuff, like sure, stock some food, have some ammo, prepare, but the future is bright.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
And to counter Dr. Doom's analysis of it, I would say that I think that the Dark Ages are ending. Yeah. And I think we are seeing the explosion of people just searching for objective reality and truth. And that's what this is. And to kind of tie it back to like the military thing, I think as much of the powers that be understood that the internet and this explosion of the ability to speak freely, they kind of saw where that could trend, and they were trying to crack down on that early on. It wasn't until like the confluence of social media, and I would also say that like the entire story that Tim just told about his experience being deployed and kind of seeing the bigger picture of what was happening, what they didn't count on was for all those veterans to come back and use that free speech to sit there and tell everybody what is really happening in these parts of the world, how the government really works, how these wars are really fought. And that was such a wrecking ball to the whole system to have somebody like speaking out against war and not be a hippie. Like, that's a big deal. Like, oh, this is the guy that like went and did it. And shit, it's not just him. There's a whole group of guys that are forming around this.
Like nowadays, it's not just the hippies. You've got all the guys who are like the primary war fighters. You've got all the guys in the SRF units. You've got all the guys like Shane. You've got all the guys like Tim. You've got all the guys like fucking Randy Kelly, on and on and on. These are the guys that everybody looks up to in the military. Like, these are the guys that go out there, they do the business. They're like on the fucking, they're dealing with the shit. And they're coming back and they're saying, yo, like, what's up?
Yeah. And it kind of gives them permission to then start speaking out against it.
Yeah, and that's the big difference now.
Yeah. I think a lot of people feel like, well, I wasn't there. I didn't do it. How can I speak out against it?
What do you think, Tim?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, there's so many guys who they go over there and they either have a terrible experience or they have For some guys, it's the time of their lives, right? I'm not saying they're all psychopaths, but some guys really find themselves on deployment. You know, they've become men on deployment, right? They finally overcome whatever struggles and demons and hole that they've been in their whole lives. And the military was the best thing that ever happened to them. So you're never going to find a uniform narrative or story about what it's like over there, right? A lot of guys have never done anything with their lives, and they go there, and this establishment, this giant institution that has so much cultural cachet, tells them, congratulations, you served your country, like you did good. And it's difficult for them to see outside of that. And then, you know, they come home and they get out, and the VA turns them into a victim class, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
what the Bureau of Indian Affairs does with Native reservations, the VA does with veterans, right? Like
Yeah.
this is, and it is horrific, right? And you see so many, God, I can't remember, it's just this infantilizing attitude towards veterans at the VA that so many of them internalize, right? So again, you know, it's difficult because so many veterans are in such a different place. And a lot of people don't want to face the idea that what they did over there was best case scenario, just kind of wrong, and worst case, like genuinely highly destructive. Right. And for me, you know, I know that a lot of the dudes that we took out were not good people, right? Like we don't need to get into all the things that happened. I never did Iraq. I did Afghanistan, kind of throughout Africa, Arabian Peninsula. Never did Iraq though. But the things that happened in Afghanistan, we'll just, you know, broadly speaking, child abuse and things like that. And it's just such a huge part of that culture. A lot of bad dudes were taken out that were a part of stuff like that, right? So I'm not saying we went over there and we were just wrecking civilians or anything like that. So don't misconstrue this. But most of what we did accomplished nothing. And we all saw that firsthand with the way that we left Afghanistan, right? Like the whole world saw. And for a lot of veterans, man, that was devastating, right? Because there was no way around it at that point. Whatever their unit commander told them at the post-deployment, you know, gala or whatever the shit was when they got home, like they all knew afterwards, like it was all for nothing, right? And that's devastating. And again, getting back on the mission for guys,
highly messed up. Like I'm gonna let Gabe talk about this for a minute, but we lost a lot of guys after that.
Yep.
You're on mute, Gabe.
Or else his microphone is.
How's that?
Yeah.
There you go.
How's that?
Gotcha.
All right, cool. All right. So, way that between the advancements that we've seen over the past couple of decades is that before, let's take a look at the Vietnam generation. Okay, now when they came back, they dealt with all the stuff that they went with, that they dealt with. They got spit on, they got treated like garbage, and I mean, we saw so many of them tailspin, and I mean, we still see the residual effects of that today. I mean, we still have them. You know, the ones that are still alive, you know, they're living on the suicide. Many of them committed fast suicide.
Gabe, you're kind of
and it was just, you know, it was freaking devastating to. How's that? I think my signal's jacked up.
It's your internet.
Yeah, you're rubber banding pretty hard.
Yeah, my bad.
It's all good, brother.
It's too bad because it's a rant that I want to hear.
I mean, I think we get the message. Like there has been a lot of dudes taking their own lives over this kind of stuff, and it's tragic. You know, Gabe's been doing a lot of really good work. You know, with Operation Libertas, reaching out to guys for a long time. You know, helping guys bridge the gap between being in military service into the civilian world, helping guys get trained up so that they can offer their skills outside of the military, and just really proud of this guy and sort of the strides that he's been making in general in Bitcoin all around the world. The guy's going to Madeira. He's created this entire system of education for veterans. He's constantly trying to help people get jobs in Bitcoin who are veterans moving into the community. It's fantastic. So Gabe, having a little bit of trouble there with your with your internet, but we appreciate you big time, man.
Yeah.
I switched to my headset. How am I doing? I got my trucker thing going on.
It's pretty good.
Thanks.
See if you can't continue where you were leaving off with your rant a little bit.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Solid.
Oh, good.
As soon as he starts talking.
Inevitably, like as soon as as soon as he starts talking, he
They're on to us, Gabe.
man. They're on. They know
Yeah, cover your mouth so that the AI doesn't know that you're talking, and then maybe
they did this to me. They did this to me last.
As soon as he uncovered his mouth.
Okay,
dude, man.
I'm just gonna say this: Gabe has been doing a tremendous amount of work for helping veterans get educated, get jobs in Bitcoin, all those kind of things. You guys should all consider, anybody who's listening to this, go to Nashville, Bitcoin 2024. Gabe is going to be there. You can talk to him in person. No interruptions.
There you go.
Great segue. Great plug.
We have a great discount for those tickets too, by the way. So I'm just getting contact.
Thanks, man. I'm going to have to learn sign language.
Smoke signals.
Get in touch with Gabe. He'll send you the Morse code for the discount code, 70% off Bitcoin 2024.
Fucking hell with it.
Let's go. You can get in touch with our Twitter. You can email us. Go to bitcoinveterans.org. Shoot us an email. We'll get you the code. If you're a veteran, spouse, get on the mission. All right.
Did we want to get like some interesting stories out of Tim, or did you guys have more questions you had for him?
Let's do that. Let's do this one thing first, though. Tim, like you came to Bitcoin. What would you say is the most important thing? How would you express to if somebody's listening to this and they're not necessarily a Bitcoiner yet, maybe they don't understand it, maybe they're trying to figure it out. They're a veteran, they're listening to this and they're like, I don't know what this is all about, man. What would you say to those guys to try to help them start to figure it out?
You know, everybody has a different message and a different way of approaching Bitcoin. Again, I come from kind of this cultural, political mindset when I look at Bitcoin. If anything I said earlier resonates with you about centralized authority and trust, then the best thing about Bitcoin is decentralization, right? Like if you have something that nobody can control, and this thing is the key to your property rights, right? To life, liberty, property, then decentralization in Bitcoin is key. It's the most important thing, right? There's no CEO, no company, nobody can control your Bitcoin if you hold your keys, not your Bitcoin. So to me, that's the most important thing. I don't know about you guys, and I'm sure everybody has a different thing, right? Depending upon where you're coming from. And I'm sure, like you said,
that's the best part of it, though, right?
Yeah, that is the best thing. And that's why you can come to Bitcoin from so many different places, right? And there's a place for you in Bitcoin, right? It's a beautiful thing.
So Tim, Randy actually wanted us to ask how you think Bitcoin helps us get closer to a white pill world. And I don't know if that's specifically tailored to you. I don't necessarily know what white pill world means either.
Yeah, well, I think he's talking about how I was talking earlier about, being incredibly optimistic, right? So I think that's kind of the white pill, black pill narrative.
Explains that the doomer of the group wouldn't understand what the white pill is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think that, in getting to this kind of white pill world, Bitcoin is the heir apparent to the Constitution, right? And like we said, separation of church and state, separation of powers, these are all huge advancements. But the next piece is the separation of money and state. So, bottom line up front, separation of money and state is how you get to the white pilled world. But as far as what that looks like it's the new and improved Constitution, because the Constitution, like we said, could never guarantee property rights. If you control the rights to your labor, the fruits of your labor, then you have as much self-sovereignty as anyone has ever had, right? And Bitcoin guarantees that. So I think that's our generation's biggest battle. Like culture wars and politics are kind of a sideshow. Like it's an interesting sideshow. And I'm not saying that libertarian Bitcoiners shouldn't get up on stage and tell Brian Kemp that he's a little bitch. Like they definitely should, but it's still kind of a sideshow, right? Money's the root of all evil. And like we said, Afghanistan spending, Ukraine funding, infrastructure bills, banker bailouts, quantitative easing, like all of this is enabled by the old world. But this white-pilled world, right? Like you want to end the culture wars, Bitcoin defunds it. You want to end DEI, Bitcoin defunds it, right? Immutable public ledger ends all of it, right? So in this Bitcoin world, this constitution that failed, like Lysander Spooner wrote about extensively, the constitution becomes elite and Bitcoin takes its place, right? So you could argue about the semantics, and there will always be those people. What about the cops? What about the roads? Who will protect us? And I won't sit here and hash all of that out, right? There's still going to be problems in the world. But I'll say this, right? The roads, the cops, our DEI military, it is already failing you miserably, right?
Yeah.
So
but they're not fixing the roads
or
or paying the cops anyway.
No, and we haven't won a war in almost 100 years, right? So don't sit there and yell about how wonderful the military is and how much we need to save this current iteration of it. It needs to be fundamentally changed and rebuilt. And again, white pill world, Bitcoin literally fixes that. In a sound money world, then you have a military that doesn't worry about DEI and all the bullshit. It worries about actually protecting you, right? Actually winning a war, spending its time and its effort on things that matter, right? It's one mission, right? So kind of a rant, but white pill world, that is how we get there. Bitcoin is how we get there.
I want to add to your white pill world situation with Bitcoin being the Constitution too. Is that think of it as a Constitution that also incentivizes you to generate as much energy and power as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the Constitution was capable of doing that, like imagine how powerful that would be. Like if it had specific structure to protect and incentivize and justify the development of as much energy as possible, which is what determines the cost of every good and service of anything on the planet. Like that's a pretty white pill world, I'd have to say.
I agree. And I don't necessarily take the energy angle, but like you said, there's so many different ways that you can get to Bitcoin, right? And so many different ways that it's so applicable to everybody's lives and their white pill future, right? It's a beautiful thing.
We've beat up on Mike quite a bit about being Dr. Doom, but I think the thing people need to kind of understand is one of the first steps I think we all took was taking the black pill. Like first you have to like kind of learn the reality and think, oh crap, this is a screwed up system now that I'm starting to learn the truth. But then from that, you start to learn about your enemy. You start to learn what the threat is. You start to learn what truth is. And through that, you gain more knowledge and you find the white pill because you have no other option. Like, what are you going to quit? Like, there is no black pill option. Like,
no.
Unless you're just a defeatist and then like you're useless. So like, what are you going to do? You're going to try to find a solution to the problem, which already means you're white pilled because you think that you can see a way. And from there, we just got to figure out what it is, which we've done a really good job in this group, I think. And we're pushing for it and we're motivating other people to keep fighting for it. How do you can't stop something like that.
Yeah.
Well,
you leave the world better than you found it, right? Bitcoiners in particular want to leave the world better than they found it. There's plenty of people who will waste their lives away on porn and alcohol and Fox News, right? But Bitcoiners don't do that. Bitcoiners are better than that, right? Because Bitcoiners care about the world that's being built. Bitcoiners themselves are building that world, right? So it's another reason for, if you're a veteran out there who isn't sure about all this stuff, get on the mission. Because that is what this is all about.
Well, and again, further to that point is that like Bitcoin also provides another avenue which is for another pillar of the solution, which is probably the most important, and it defends the nuclear family because it allows savings as a wealth generation strategy. because you can't do that in the fiat standard. Like, it's not possible. It's not feasible.
Yeah, you
And
can't
by
do it.
doing that, but go ahead, man.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I actually noticed I always get these. I have like a Amex and Chase cards and all these different things. I'm always getting these offers, like you're pre-approved for, X amount, right, of whatever it is. And if you ever look at the fine print, it's like, so they stipulate what you can actually spend this stuff on, right? So it's like large purchases, like furniture. You can't buy a car, I don't think, but like a down payment on a car. It's all these kind of pre-approved personal loans. Basically, all of these financial institutions hit you up to go into debt to purchase liabilities, right?
Yep.
Like that's the whole system.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to log into, say, your Chase account with your personal loan and then try to go to Swan or to River or whoever it is and try to buy Bitcoin, they will shut you down immediately. Right. Because this system, right, this financial system is set up to keep people enslaved, buying liabilities after liabilities after liabilities, right? And Bitcoin is literally the way out of that, right?
Yeah.
So like you said, generational, finally saving, finally being able to plan for the future. The amount of anxiety that people feel in this highly inflationary world, you see it. I work in insurance.
Oh, it's massive. Massive.
Yeah, people are coming all the time. Like, I can't afford my car insurance anymore. Like a basic necessity in life because of this fiat world. Bitcoin literally takes this, flips it on its head, and lets people save and plan for the future in a way that has never been possible before, not even with gold. And I'm just talking about white pill stuff again. It's a beautiful thing.
I love it. Okay, so going back really quick to something that Tim said a moment ago was that, like, if you are active duty, veteran, first responder, or military adjacent, any of those things, connect with us. All right. Because, like, for us, it's all about helping you understand what all this is all about. We have chat groups set up. We have lots of initiatives going on. Like, Gabe is heading up Operation Bitcoin, which is teaching people about how to learn about the things you need to do to get a job in this sector. And many other things that we're working on, like Shane, for example, is running the Brave mission, which is helping with PTSD and various other things. So we have these different chat groups set up. Love to have you join us, be a part of it. If you're interested in learning more about Bitcoin, we're all about that. So please connect to us.
Hell yeah.
All right. Do we want to do story time?
Probably do story time.
I think story time is appropriate.
So, Tim, we know you're a listener. You've mentioned that before, at least in our pre-show contract where we agreed to have you sign and read this stuff off. You agreed that you would watch several episodes, so you understand what story time is. What is a story, from your time in service or whenever, that was kind of looking, probably at the time it was a tough decision or a tough situation, but looking back on it, you kind of laugh and it's funny, or maybe you learned something from it.
Yeah. I thought about different stories and I was like, man, I spent some time in Thailand. Should I talk about some of those stories?
Oh boy.
And I decided not to do that.
That's probably smart.
Yeah. A lot of those dudes are still married, so we won't go there. But I was thinking about this the other day. I went to boot camp with two guys that I went to high school with. We were in I don't know what the Navy called it. I can't remember, some kind of buddy program. So we all enlisted together, did all the early entry stuff together, and went to boot camp together. And one of the guys, Zach, was the exact same height as me. So, in a height line in boot camp, you're always getting ready to get in formation when you're in the spaces. So we were always lining right up next to each other. And we'd been at boot camp for like a week. And I don't know if you guys experienced this when you deployed. By far, looking back at my military career, the absolute worst food in the military was the boot camp food. We had better food on deployments than we had in boot camp, right? Like this stuff was prison adjacent. And I haven't been to prison, but whatever they got in prison, probably
prison
better
adjacent
than what they have in boot camp, right? Prison adjacent food. So, you know, I drink coffee, so I don't have an issue doing my morning business. But we were standing there in the height line. And we'd been there for probably a week and a half, maybe. And, you know, you're not really supposed to talk in the height line, like you're getting ready to get in formation. And so, you know, Zach, he's right back there behind me, and he's like, Dad. I'm like, and I just ignore him. I'm like, I'm not supposed to be talking. I'm not trying to get yelled at. I already did too many push-ups today. And he's like, Dad. I'm like, what? And he just leans in. He's like, I'm taking a shit in a week and a half. And I'm like, bro, you got to go to the doctor. Like this is a terrible situation. He's like, I don't want to go to the doctor. I don't want to miss time. Like he's afraid to get in trouble and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, just drink the coffee. He's like, I don't drink coffee. I'm like, just drink the coffee.
You do now.
So that night, you know, we go at formation. We end up, we're doing our exercise. We eat and do the whole thing. Come back that night. We're getting in another height line. And I like, again, same thing. He's like, Dad. I'm like, what? He's like, I can't stop shitting. I'm like, here we go. He's like, I'm afraid I'm going to have to go to the doctor. I can't stop shitting. I'm like, bro, don't shit on yourself while we're in formation, like marching across Great Lakes, right? Like, just don't do it. Like, do you need to go to the doctor? Doesn't end up going to the doctor, but the boot camp coffee solved his shit problem.
Oh my God.
Hell yeah.
It's interesting. It's
True
interesting
story.
in boot camp, the kinds of information that people will share with you.
True story. True story. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah. Well, especially, you know, being a white kid from Wyoming, there's a level of cultural diversity that you experience in boot camp that just slaps you right in the face, man. Like it's just amazing stuff.
Highly educational, right? Highly educational. Okay, so question, and this is for all of you guys that have been in boot. Like, did you ever get so fucking tired, that you could be marching in formation and then wake up and realize you had fallen asleep?
I don't think I ever experienced that.
That ever happened to you?
Yeah,
it happened to me.
But it's not like in a sleep. It's that thing where you're just completely disoriented and like you kind of knew what you were doing, but you didn't really know what you were doing.
Yeah, you're an autopilot.
Autopilot, 100%.
Okay. If that's what you're talking about, then like the brain just shuts off for a bit. It's like, we need a break.
It's like the company the company commander calls for an halt, right? And you stop, and it's like you look around, you're like, holy fuck, where am I? How did I get here? You know, like what is going on here?
Well, that shows. Go to SEER school?
That shows just how. Which one?
Yeah.
Did you guys go to SEER school? Yeah, SEER
Jordan
school, like
did.
those. Yeah, so those
I had
last
a
few days.
I had a very like weak surface level one. Like doesn't really even count.
Okay, well, like in the wartime one, SV 80, I think it is. You know, those last few days, you get rolled up into the prison camp eventually. So you're up for, is it 72 hours, 96 hours, something like that. By the end of that time, you know, after you haven't slept for like 2, 3, 4 days, you start seeing the little, like the shadow monsters, right? And that's where your brain just starts checking it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like just right there on the edge of your vision, like you just start, like your brain starts checking out.
Dude,
like,
you see some weird shit. Like, I didn't really have that in SEER school. It was more like I haven't eaten in that many days, but it was Ranger school was like really sleep depriving. And there was one time where like we were all kind of getting up in the morning, like we're getting ready to do our shit, and the Ranger instructor comes in the middle of the patrol base, and he just looks over, and we're like, what the fuck's he looking at? And he's like, Ranger, what the fuck are you doing? And this guy is outside of the patrol base, like 50 meters, and he's like on one knee doing this, and he's like, I'm disseminating information, Sergeant. And he's just giving it to this fucking bush. He's just like, yo, man, you got to do this. And finally he like snapped out of it. And it was like, where the fuck? Why am I outside of the patrol base? And it was like, it was one of those, like, that's kind of something you kind of get in trouble for. But like the RI knew this dude was, he didn't know he was doing this. This was not intentional. Like this guy was just fucking had not slept. That was pretty fucking funny.
It's amazing.
It's also kind of scary too, like to see to see what the human mind and body is capable of without consciousness being like at the helm. That's a little scary.
Yeah, it's kind of the whole point, though, right? A lot of the stuff
Yeah.
that we did, it's all about sleep deprivation or like very difficult circumstances. Can you actually complete the mission?
Can we train you to do this job without even thinking? Like literally, you're half asleep, continuing to march.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I would like to do for just a minute is kind of like bring home that for those of you who went out there, you did your thing. Maybe it wasn't what you thought it was. You came back and you're like, man, what the fuck? Why did I spend that time? Why did I go do these things? Why did I make those sacrifices? Why did I carry this stuff that I'm carrying? Like, Bitcoin is a new mission, guys. Like, once you take the time to understand what it is, like, all I'm going to say is for those of you who are kind of checking this thing out, spend some time with us, connect with us, like get into our chat groups, come down to Nashville, come down to Colorado, the different things that we're doing, like the Brave mission, go to Shane's Mountain. If you've got like issues with PTSD, if you got stuff that like you're trying to work through, awesome opportunities. And I just want to encourage you all to get involved because in some ways, this is life-saving stuff, literally.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I would say. And I gotta say too, like our group chats are pretty freaking wild. But besides having the support system, like the entertainment is there and it doesn't stop.
Yeah,
and it's informative. It's like a perfect balance of autism and awesome at the same time.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
Tim.
I was gonna say, I just think Bitcoin veterans is well positioned to make Bitcoiners a little less autistic, right? Like I think that's a solid, that's a good place. It's a good niche for Bitcoin veterans, and I hope Bitcoin veterans has a big impact there in Nashville this year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well,
That's what we're going to.
speaking of that, shout outs to Gabe and the other guys who've been working on this with Bitcoin Magazine. We've been given basically a 40 by 40 area where we're going to set up a command tent. We're going to set up like a bunch of really cool shit. If you're interested in sponsoring or getting involved in some way, we can do that. We're going to have a lot of cool stuff going on. We're going to do an hour each day. Jordan, you want to talk a little bit about like the different events we have coming up?
Yeah, so it all kicks off on July 24th. We're going to do a community outreach, community service event we want to pull in not just the Bitcoin veterans community, but we want to pull in Bitcoiners, any other kind of like adjacent units, like whether it's like libertarian guys or whoever, like guys that are out there on the mission in one form or fashion. And we want us all out there helping the community to show like we aren't these like terrorist funding idiots like fucking EW wants you to think. Like we're normal dudes that want to like help out. So that's like kind of day one of the Bitcoin Veterans Conference. Day two, July 25th. It's the same day as the Bitcoin 2024 Industry Day. But if you're not going to that, which most people probably aren't, we were running a range day. If you're like a civilian out there or we want to help train you up, we're going to have a whole bunch of guys that know what they're doing in a very safe, controlled environment, teaching you whether this is the first gun you've picked up or you've put some rounds down range before and you just want somebody else to help you out to kind of go to that next step. That's what we're going to be helping with. We're also like during the event, like Alex said, on the 26th and 27th, we're going to have a big old tent set up with like booths inside of that. If you're a veteran and you have a business and you kind of want some space to come to, we're going to have a booth within our tent. You can set up there, like no charge if you're out there. So that's going to be happening those 2 days. We're also getting a classroom. And so we're going to be running contingency working groups. Bill Stebbins' whole idea, we've discussed that on the show with him. We're going to be running that. We need to be running, we kind of touched on it earlier today, Alex. We need to be running like a Citadel, like standard operating procedures type class. Get guys who want or currently are building Citadels, get in a room together and let's hash this out in real life, in the meat space. And let's hash out some of these ideas that we're all kicking around. Like, we can accomplish a lot when we're all in a room together for 30 minutes to an hour. I think we will be able to accomplish a lot.
Yeah.
Once the dick jokes end.
And Jordan, I want to add on to that too, because as of last week, we also have a discount code for BitBlock Boom conference tickets. And we haven't gotten the green light to share with you guys like the amount of that discount, but I can tell you it's large and it's very comparable to what the Bitcoin Magazine conference is. So like, if you're interested in either one of them or both of them, get in contact with us the same way we've been saying, like Bitcoin Veterans Twitter, each of us, like our personal accounts on Twitter, like LinkedIn, Signal, whatever, and we can get you guys connected with all that information.
Yeah, and great work on that too, Mike. And great work not only to the guys that come on this show, but all the guys in the background, like in the chats, everybody just taking on a mission and like working on it. Like, there's so many guys, I don't even know if they want to be named. And if they do, I couldn't name them all without forgetting somebody. I appreciate that, Mike. Thanks for the thumbs up.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But yeah, there's literally an army behind us, like working on things. And Tim knows better than anybody. Like, he is very ingrained in our community that's going on behind the scenes. And that's not like, you can speak on that, Tim. This isn't a pre-plugged thing if you want to elaborate on that at all.
No, just Bitcoin Veterans group, that chat, like the amount of support that guys have for each other. Like, anybody struggling, got a thing going on, got a question. Like, there was a guy that came into the chat a while back. He was asking about some altcoin. And I mean, we kind of made fun of him a little bit, but like, everybody was chill, right? Everybody's in a different place. Like, it's a great community. So don't know anything about Bitcoin. I mean, you don't have to, like, come be part of the group, like, get with the community. And it, like, I was going to say, my girlfriend will tease me about my internet friends, right? All these random Bitcoiners and all these places. But man, there's a sense of community there that, wasn't really possible in the past, that you can be a part of that now. So, it's a great thing.
If it makes you feel any better, Tim, my wife feels the same way about my internet friends, but she's already kind of stuck. She's kind of stuck with me. We got a kid, the fact you have a girlfriend who's still hanging out and still by your side. That says a lot about
making dinner right now.
I want to add one thing, and that is, like, a lot of guys who joined the military did it based on like this sense of honor, this sense of like a warrior spirit, this sense of like, I want to do something good for my fellow man. How do I serve my family? How do I serve my community? And like, what I find with Bitcoin veterans is that sense of honor is preserved. This is a way that you can get involved in something that is making a difference. And it's very powerful.
Yeah. I wanted to add to Tim's point when he mentioned like the group chat, like keep in mind, guys, it is a group of guys and military guys. So if you're going to ask a question, just be prepared. There's going to be some like tough skin, like callousing going on before the actual answer gets done.
But that's not necessarily bad, right? Like,
no.
This is an opportunity, especially for those guys who are like, if you're not from the military, if you're like maybe first responder, or you're maybe just like not even, you're just adjacent to the community, but you want to be around guys who are going to sharpen you. This is a great way to do it. Like, if you don't like turn the opposite direction and completely puss out and be like, oh my gosh, I can't deal with this. this will make you a stronger man. And it's
Yeah.
really good for yourself, for your family, for your community. It's an awesome thing.
Yeah,
And embrace it. Like embrace the suck, man. Go for it.
It's kind of like the military culture SOP, right? Like you can ask for help, but first I'm gonna beat you up for it first because you're asking for help to begin with.
It's all right. You'll get stronger, I promise.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody have any final comments? Do we want to let Gabe try to get another shot in? We know he's sitting on just nuggets of knowledge over there. Let's see if his internet's improved at all.
Hear me?
Nope.
Jesus.
Can you hear me? No.
Look at his face on the feed. He's frozen.
Yes.
Hey, Gabe. Yeah. We love you. We love you,
it's
man.
Frozen on
it is frozen.
It's frozen on LFG.
Thanks, man. There you go.
Oh,
that's all I got for
that,
you. Shit.
Just keep the notepad up. The audio's working.
I'm telling you, every time your mouth is covered, your audio works perfectly.
Freaking Starlink. And
That's
Elon.
amazing.
Oh man! All right.
I have nothing. Tim?
No, if I could just pimp myself real quick, I'm always looking for a job in Bitcoin. So if you're hiring ops, client services, HR, I'll probably make some inappropriate comments, but I could probably figure out HR too. So, hit me up, LinkedIn, Tim Johlman, or, send me a DM on Twitter, but don't ask me. I got 4,500 people that follow me on Twitter. I know it's a huge number. Don't ask me to pimp your altcoin. It's not going to happen.
Can appreciate that. It does happen a lot, actually, for those that have not experienced it.
Yeah.
I got nothing I want to add.
Alex?
All right. No, I just want to thank again, like everybody who's involved in this thing has been awesome. There are many people who go unmentioned who just do the work. Your heads down, you're humble, you just fucking get it done. Appreciate all you guys. Like we do this show, we 5 of us get on here plus special guests, and we just talk about bullshit. But it's like all the guys that are on the mission doing this thing in the background. Shit, it's you guys, man.
Oh yeah,
really appreciate you.
They're the heavy lift, really.
Yeah.
I just have one more thing to add to everyone listening, and I see a couple of you dropped out. You better jump back in here. I really want everyone to understand that, like, one way or another, like anybody that tells you that they can like see the future or know exactly what's going to happen, they're full of shit. I don't really know like what's going to happen or how it's going to go down, but I'm pretty confident that like right now we're living in a revolution, whether that's because of Bitcoin, whether that's because of U.S. government politics. Like I think on multiple levels, just in the United States and across the world, I think we are going through a revolution that I do think Bitcoin is playing a big part in. I think the internet is probably playing a bigger part in that. And it's mostly because of situations like this where people can get together and speak the truth we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. So like embrace the fact that we are going through a revolution right now. You can take that black pilled, white pilled, however you want. I choose to take it as a white pill. That there are great, like we see it coming and we're going to be able to react, and we're going to be the ones that are leading in the future. So prepare yourself to be a leader amongst men in a very quickly changing and ever adapting environment. Like it's coming. So get on board and get ready. Do like what we've done with this show from day one, is just grab that fucking bull by the horns and just go for a ride and try to tame it and try to accomplish as many missions while you're on that ride as you can. I appreciate everybody joining us today. Shane's gone, so this is my half-assed excuse of a outro. But I appreciate everybody. Truly, I know everybody here, including Tim, appreciates everybody listening. Everybody in the chats, in the current chat that's going on online right now, the chats that are going on 24/7 that we can't even keep up with. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be doing this every Thursday night for the foreseeable future until we decide to change it again. So thank you. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Reach out to us and get on the mission.
Amen.